Well, I'm going to start with a little brain teaser. And David said, oh, you're going to get thunderous laughter, I can just tell. I said, well, I don't know if it's me not able to tell the joke or people not getting it, because it was, first of all, I didn't get it. But here it goes anyway. You matter. Unless you multiply yourself by the speed of light, then you energy. So we're looking at matter and energy, in case you didn't get it.
Speed light squared.
And it fits perfectly with what we're talking about today, how to use it. So as most of you know, we are on the fourth and final day of our 4-week talk from the beginning chapters of the science of mind, the thing itself, the way it works, what it does, and how to use it. So basically, God is all that is, or whatever you choose to call it. It works through love and law in union, and what it does is manifest according to consciousness, personal consciousness and universal consciousness. And so today, how to use it. For today, we're going to be talking a lot about energy and looking at how Ernest Holmes uses this topic for how to use it. And we've incorporated a writing from Nikola Tesla about vibration. So we're looking at energy, its frequency, and vibration, and how that impacts our personal lives, especially as we think, because that's how we use it, is to think. So Tesla writes, there are too many distractions in this life for quality of thought, and it's quality of thought, not quantity, that matters. And Ernest Holmes tells us that thoughts held in mind create after their kind. So in this writing this week, he cautions us about taking part in too much theory and not enough actual practice. And BB's reflection today was perfect for that. We can't sit around and willy-nilly wish for something. We must get specific with what we think about, because what we think about, we bring about. And so if we make use of the principle of mental practice faithfully, we become more adept at proving it. And it becomes more tangible to us as we do that. When Ernest Holmes is talking about law in this section, he talks about how by conscious thinking, we give conscious direction to the law, and it responds because it takes form through the impulse of our creative thinking. It works for us by flowing through us. He writes that when we are dealing with real life, and then he tells us what his idea of real life is for that, thoughts, impulses, and emotions. When we are dealing with our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions, we are dealing with causation. First cause, God, source, call it whatever you wish. And we should be most careful with such powers and forces.
I've been fascinated as I've gone through these first four chapters this beginning of this year, and looking at the idea that we're talking about a science. We're not talking necessarily about a spiritual philosophy, except that it is backed up by science. And so I think it's interesting that we chose today to talk about Nikola Tesla and a little bit of Einstein too, and to know how they actually back up what Ernest Holmes is talking about. And Tesla had these 7 basic principles or ideas, and the first one is about thought. Tesla says every thought emits a frequency. Does that sound familiar? Well, Holmes said it, Troward said it, Emerson said it, probably every New Thought teacher has said exactly the same thing, because that's the basis of our teaching. Every thought emits a frequency. So I think since we're talking about science, and we're thinking about thoughts and so on, I thought it might be important to bring about this very important distinction that the brain and the mind are not the same thing. And we quite often get caught up in our physical identity and really think that the brain is what's controlling everything. Well, the only function of the human brain is to maintain your physical body's mechanics, to coordinate all the activity happening in the body. And actually, there is enough going on consciously and unconsciously, continuously and continually for the brain to pretty much have its hands full, to keep busy all the time. Think about this, just breathing and beating your heart would be a full-time job if you had to think about it all the time. We breathe 22,000 times a day. 22,000 times a day. Hardly gives us time to think about shopping, does it? And the heart beats 100,000 times a day. 100,000 times a day. Now, when I'm with Deborah, mine beats maybe 120,000 times a day. I would pitter patter. And if that's not enough to boggle your mind, that's 35 million times in a year. Your heart beats 35 million times in a year. You don't have to think about it once. It happens automatically. It's enough to boggle the mind, isn't it? And that's a good thing, because it can boggle the mind because we can think about other things, but our brain really kind of needs all its capacity, all its bandwidth to do the stuff that it has to do. Remember, it has nothing to do with creativity, imagination, inspiration, thoughts, ideas, and etc. That is left to the mind. It leaves the brain plenty of bandwidth to do all the stuff it has to do to keep your ticker going.
Yes, it does. So that absolutely shows us that we should control our thought processes and absolutely bring them into alignment with reality. Our thought should tend more and more toward the affirmative. And Holmes tells us that the affirmative would be the positive, the stable, and above all else, toward a real unity with spirit that is already complete and perfect. There is nothing to be fixed in this universe. There is already that perfection that is the source energy of all that is. And so the second idea is the company that we keep. Tesla calls it the companies. And I kind of like that. We create these little companies for ourselves with the groups that we hang out with. And so the people around us directly influence the vibrational frequency that we have going on for ourselves. And so we want to surround ourselves, obviously, with happy, positive people. We want them to be determined. We want them to have the qualities that we desire to have, because we are going to vibrate at that same frequency as those that are around us. And so if you're surrounding yourself with people that complain and gossip, then you're not doing yourself any favors. We don't want to hang out with pessimists. We want to hang out with people who are able to have conversations that address truth and principles, and if there are things that we want to make shifts in, are looking for the way to do that rather than the way to complain about that, because it reduces our frequency, and therefore it can have an impact on what we're attracting in our lives.
The third concept of Tesla is the music. Makes sense as we're talking about frequencies and vibrations, doesn't it? Albert Einstein says, "We are slowed down sound and light waves, a walking bundle of frequencies tuned into the music of the cosmos. We are a soul dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments through which our souls play their music. Isn't that a beautiful thought? Remember, he's a scientist. That sounds very poetic and romantic kind of in a way, doesn't it? He's talking about the fact that we actually live within a realm of frequency and vibration and resonance. And resonance is a very important part of that. We create vibrations ourselves, and they go out into the universe around us, and then we get to see what happens as a result of that. We create our own reality through our thought processes, creating a vibration that sends something out into the universe, and the universe resonates with that, and then it comes back to us, or we get to see it, pictured in front of us. We also receive the vibrations and frequencies and stuff from other people, and so therefore we are interacting with vibrations and frequencies and resonances all the time. There's this wonderful terminology known as sympathetic resonance, and you may be familiar with that. It's something I used to teach in my music appreciation classes. I want to try a demonstration this morning. This is what I used to do in my classes. As I'm walking across the room, it's like vibrations traveling across. I create a vibration and is looking out through the environment for something that it can resonate with. So I open the piano here and sing into the piano. The strings of the piano are going to resonate with my voice. Listen. Ah. Can you hear them? Until I release the pedal and it dampens the sound. Listen again. Ah. Notice only the strings that are resonating with that pitch will vibrate. None of the rest of them will. Ah. Can you hear the pitch in the strings? It's kind of challenging. You really have to listen hard, but it's there. What that shows us is whatever we put out into the universe, whatever we emit into the universe around us, things are going to vibrate and resonate with that. So we're very powerful, aren't we? We're putting out energy, and the universe is receiving that energy and then responding to it. Whatever we emit shows up around us.
Yeah, and that really gives us a good reason to make sure that we're attracting into our life those friends and family members that are positive and uplifting and supportive. And as we were practicing, I said to David, oh my gosh, I remember reading in the chapter, Ernest Holmes talks about sympathetic resonance, and I really like this statement. So I went back and I found it, and he's talking when he's writing about how to keep our thought focused in a heavenly state of consciousness. And he says, of all the people in the world, the ones who have come the nearest to touching the seamless garment of truth have been the most sympathetic and the greatest lovers of the race. Love. We cannot say love enough. It's the most powerfully moving idea that life offers us. Love. Holmes says we should be able to look a discordant fact in the face and deny its reality. We should be able to look at a wrong condition with knowledge that it can change. Now, those are two powerful ideas to remember whenever we come up against something that feels negative or that we're resisting. So, those two ideas, what we're looking at, are exactly Tesla's fourth idea, the things you look at. And he doesn't just mean with your eyes, because he writes about how when we look at TV programs, or when we look at events that are going on in the world, or in our life, or in the lives of our loved ones, they often deal with misfortunes, with death, with betrayal. You insert your own. I'm not going to go on too much with that list. But our brain accepts this reality as the truth. And it releases a whole chemistry into our body. And that chemistry affects the vibrational frequency of our body. our body's cells. So it's vital that we do the things that feel good and that help us to vibrate at a healthy, happy frequency. In Science of Mind, we learn that we should mentally refuse to accept any and all false positions. We learn when we take classes to declare expectancy of good, to image plenty, and specifically what we desire in our lives, to mentally deny anything that contradicts the realization of the truth that you desire. And in so doing this, we are not ever refusing to help others, to be there for others, to support others, to look at what appears in front of us. We're not denying what is going on presently in the moment. But what we are doing is changing our consciousness so that the false condition disappears. And that's how to use it.
Remember I said, oh, by the way, the fifth concept is called the atmosphere. Kind of talked that a little bit ago, but we'll talk about it some more. Remember I said that creativity, imagination, inspiration, thoughts and ideas, etc. are left to the mind, not to the brain. So where do they come from? They're not coming from our brain. We think that we're thinking them in our head, but that's not exactly accurate. The word inspiration literally means from spirit. The Latin word inspiratus means to breathe into, to blow into, and quite often it says is considered the breath of God. That means these functions are coming to us or through us, not from the brain, but from a more extensive cosmic or universal source. Our thoughts are resonating with universal energy. So we're receiving universal energy, and our thoughts, our mind is resonating with that universal energy. It is also believed by many scientists we don't even hold our own memories within our body or within our brain. Our memories come from the source energy around us. Rupert Sheldrake calls it morphogenetic resonance. Carl Jung calls it the collective unconscious. Nikola Tesla says if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Einstein said energy equals matter at the speed of sound squared. We know that. Holmes says life is infinite energy coupled with limitless creative imagination. Remember, all these things that are occurring within the mind. It's basically saying that life is a spiritual activity, not a physical activity. So the idea that we need to be centered on is to avoid mental clutter that can get in the way of divine circuits.
His sixth idea is our word. And so in this part, he's talking about how if we claim or speak wrong about things or about people, it affects our vibrational frequency. And to keep it high, it's essential that we eliminate habits of complaining or bad talking. This includes things like creating drama or hanging out with those that create drama. It includes bullying or thinking even within our own families, thinking that we know what's best for someone else, and so we're going to kind of try to bully them into our way of thinking. We get our life, and we have plenty to do with our one magnificent life without getting involved in anyone else's. So keeping our frequency high, spending time in meditation, taking classes, hanging out with people of like mind, talking about ideas. I know David and I can talk about spirituality and probably never be done with it. And every time you read something from Ernest Holmes, it's new again. You're in a new place, and so those words are new to you. It's like, wow, did I ever read these? And I look at a lot of the things that I've text marked or bookmarked, and I'm like, wonder why I chose that. This page before it is really magnificent. And so the list goes on, and we each get to decide for ourselves what we're going to do with our word, our thought.
So it's interesting that it leads us into the final 7th concept of Tesla, which is gratitude. And I believe that's a very, very important one. Gratitude affects your vibrational frequency and your ability to tune into all the good of the universe, allowing yourself to open up and recognize all the good that is around you. And remember that gratitude is a choice. You can stay closed or you can open up. The way I see it is, gratitude depends on your frame of mind. And I use that word frame very carefully because your frame of mind determines your capacity to receive. You can have a big frame and look at the bigger picture, or you can think like a postcard picture and have a small frame of mind. And that's going to allow whatever good you want to receive from the universe, either access or resistance. An attitude of gratitude opens the window because you're aware of the good waiting to enter. So open the windows. But many of us have this fear that if I open the windows, something is going to come in. Well, it's possible and it's probable. But after all, to gain valuable lessons from, we quite often gain negative lessons from negative experiences. And some of those negative experiences in our life are some of the greatest lessons we've ever learned. It's a choice. You can buy into the negativity, or you can take a chance and buy into the good, the possibility of the good, letting it flow in freely. Ernest Holmes talks about this, and it's my favorite quote by Ernest Holmes. Of all the things I've ever heard Ernest Holmes say, this is my favorite, and I say it this week, every year. It has to do with the activity of the law, and whether or not it's going to work for you positively or negatively, it just works. He says, if we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then according to the principle, it does not. But when it does not, it still does. Only it does according to our belief that it will not.
That says it all about how it works. So, I like the idea of the frame, small or large, and so I pose the question for each of us today. What are your dreams? What do you think about small or large? How big is your frame? This week I asked my students if they could have anything in the entire world, what would you choose? We were in a big circle around the room. We have this little foamy ball that we throw around to take turns, and the first person said a dog, and the next one said a hairless cat, and this went on for a while, and I finally said, okay, that's great. You have things and you know some of the things you want, but let's think bigger, even bigger. So the next one said, well, I'd like to have a baseball field. And I said, okay, that's a lot bigger, but I know he's really into baseball, and so I was like, but do you really mean you want a field, or would you like to have a whole team and the whole stadium and everything that goes with that? And he goes, oh, yes, I want that. So think outside that box and let us realize that we have to trust this invisible power of life, because that is what creates for us the visible. And with that in mind, I would like you to imagine that I'm Ernest Holmes, and I'm just finishing up writing this chapter, and I'm going to read the way that it concludes to us. Let me see if that turns up any better. It is useless as well as foolish to make any attempts to cover the principle or to hold it as it is vested right. Will you read it for me? I don't know what it is under the slide. I can't read the. It's right here, and it's so good.
It is useless as well as foolish to make any attempts to cover this principle or to hold it as a vested right of any religion, sect, or order. The truth will out. The Spirit will make itself known. Happy are we if we see these things which, from the foundation of the human race, have been longed for by all aspiring souls. True thought deals directly with first cause, and this science is the study of first cause, spirit, or the truth, that invisible essence, that ultimate stuff and intelligence from which everything comes, the power back of creation, the thing itself.
Thank you. What a magnificent writer he is. And so as we go forward this week, find your frequency and allow it to vibrate throughout every part of your being and your life. And so it is.
So it is.